What would you do if you tasted the life of the insanely wealthy and lost it all in a flash? Sure, you could lose a few dollars from your pockets or get too excited at the casino and throw away thousands of dollars, but when it's billions of dollars, it's a whole new ballgame. So, how do people go from being billionaires to losing every single penny? We'll be telling you all about it today. So, pay close attention. There are a few lessons here in case you ever get that billionaire tag. Before we get into this video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything we post. Patricia Cluj. In 1990, when Patricia Cluj was able to walk away from her marriage to television mogul and richest man in the United States at the time, John Cluj, she did this with about $1 billion. The belly dancer turned businesswoman received settlements of about $1 million yearly. But that's not all. Patricia also got a $100 million home, which shot her into the billionaire category. As a member of the upper echelons of American high society, Patricia continued with her lavish lifestyle, including hosting hunting parties. However, it all came crashing down during the 2008 recession, and this cost her everything. Her financial problems became much worse following the aggressive expansion of her wine company, Cluj Estate Winery. It didn't help that she established super luxurious vineyard estates in various top-tier locations. This was the time of the housing crisis. No one, not even the rich, was willing to buy her multi-million-dollar homes, even though they came with private vineyards. Eventually, she had to file for bankruptcy in 2011, as it all came tumbling down. Last we heard, Patricia is back to belly dancing, and those hips aren't lying. Up next is Robert Allen Stanford. Known mostly by his middle name Allen, this financier began his journey to real estate domination and extreme wealth in the 1980s. As his fortunes continued to grow, he decided it was a good idea to start his bank in Antigua, Stanford International Bank, in 1985. In less than 2 years, this bank had become a global finance empire, even recognized by the Antiguan government in 2006. However, while most people saw Allen as a smart economist, things started to unravel really quickly when it came to the source of his wealth. Before long, it was revealed that Allen's $10 million mansion, cricket tournament cash prizes worth millions, and a fleet of private jets all had dirty foundations. They were tied to political manipulation, money laundering, and bribery. To make matters worse, Allen treated Stanford International Bank like his personal ATM, spending money from it lavishly. An investigation in 2009 revealed that there was more dirt on Stanford Financial Group. It was simply a Ponzi scheme, promising investors safe returns while sending all the money into the owner's pockets. All this while Allen falsified records to hide his tracks. Apparently, he didn't hide it well enough, and he was arrested and ordered to pay almost $7 billion to defrauded investors. He didn't have up to this amount at the time, but investors had to be satisfied with the very long 110-year sentence served to the 69-year-old. Up next is Phillip Bennett. How does the CEO of a highly ranked New York-based brokerage lose every penny, including his reputation? Well, losing billionaire status isn't that easy unless you spend the money faster than you can make it, or, in this case, commit fraud on the regular. Phillip noticed that his company, Refco, had hundreds of millions in losses, all from unpaid loans. He felt that the perfect solution to this was to disguise the losses as receivables from another company he secretly owned. This was a typical case of corporate stock fraud, which made it seem like his company was doing so well. No one knew what was happening, and Phillip was able to indulge in million-dollar luxuries like owning some Andy Warhol paintings, a $20 million plane, and 7 Ferraris. By 2005, the dishonest CEO had gotten almost $2 billion from investors, all towards his personal fortune. Eventually, the law caught up with him, and investigators discovered the debt. Phillip had to pay back everything he owed, and of course, he went bankrupt. But he had more than enough time to think about his actions while serving a 16-year sentence in prison. Up next is Elizabeth Holmes. It all started well for Elizabeth Holmes, and most people felt that she was destined for greatness. She had billionaire ambitions and achieved it after dropping out from Stanford University at 19. Her company, which she named Theranos, was focused on creating technology for diagnosing and monitoring diseases. It was well on its way to becoming one of the most promising startups in Silicon Valley. By 2014, 2014, Theranos had more than $350 million worth of investments, and they were valued at about $9 billion. For Elizabeth, this put her net worth at more than $4 billion. She had finally become a billionaire and was living the life of the super rich. Up until the moment her company crumbled, investors didn't mind that she operated the company in extreme secrecy. They were satisfied with the results seen so far. But that changed when the FDA launched an investigation into Theranos in 2015. They discovered several inaccuracies in the company's testing mechanism, which was further compounded by the fact that they were using standard industry blood analysis equipment. Safe to say that the company was built on a lot of lies. Now the investors were no longer happy, and after Theranos shut down for good in 2018, they had to return all their money. This was just the beginning of Elizabeth's trials. She got charged with massive fraud while her finances dwindled to nothing. Her trial was meant to be held in 2020, but was postponed to March 2021 due to the global health situation. Up next is Sean Quinn. Sean Quinn is an Irishman that grew his small gravel business into a company that dominated the hospitality, insurance, and construction industries. He was so successful that by 2008, Sean had a whopping $6 billion net worth. He was unarguably the richest man in Ireland at this time and bought himself a fancy house in the Irish countryside. Although he wasn't a flashy man by nature, this didn't stop him from making really terrible financial decisions. At the time, Sean had a 30% stake in Anglo-Irish Bank. Sadly, he made a risky gamble, which was further compounded by the 2008 financial crash. The Irishman had taken out huge loans from the bank and bet that their share prices would change positively. All his fortune crumbled to the ground as he watched the 2008 crisis send his share prices plummeting downwards at an alarming rate. Anglo-Irish Bank became nationalized, and it was time for Sean to pay his debts. Unfortunately, his insurance company had incurred huge losses, and with the general decline of the market, there was nothing he could do but declare bankruptcy in 2011. Luckily, about $3 billion of Sean's debts were written off in 2015, leaving him with only a few thousand to pay back. He went on to become a consultant, a pretty regular job for someone who was once the richest man in the country. Up next, Adolf Merkel. Adolf Merkel's story is a mix of bad luck, terrible timing, and all-around tragedy. He was a businessman that developed his father's chemical business in the 20th century into a renowned pharmaceutical retailer in Germany. Adolf was so successful that he had other great ventures in the construction, finance, and pharmacy industry. With a net worth of more than $12 billion in 2007, it was quite surprising that he preferred to ride a 15-year-old bicycle from Aldi. However, his minimal spending habits couldn't save him from the consequences of the 2008 economic crash. Before he got on the wrong side of trading Volkswagen shares, Adolf was worth more than $9 billion. However, the banking crisis led to the value of his holding company, VEM, dropping by more than 70%. Banks refused to give him loans, and he had to make personal guarantees with his assets worth more than $3 billion. When Adolf couldn't handle the possibility of his family business crumbling after increasing company debts by about $6 billion, he threw himself in front of the train near his home. This marked the end of the former billionaire's life. Up next is Bernie Madoff. Bernie's story started with a focus on promising penny stocks. His skills as a stockbroker had him breezing through the stock market through the 70s and 80s until he became known as the most influential one on the scene. By this time, he was already earning more than $100 million yearly. Of course, he had to look the part, and he spent his money on quite a few luxury items. Bernie bought sports cars, owned various known and unknown overseas accounts, and purchased yachts and expensive houses. He was living in his magic touch. Well, if you would have seen the substantial returns he presented to his investors, you would have been as happy as they were. Turns out, it was all a fabricated Ponzi scheme designed to use the money from new investors to pay existing clients. This ruse was discovered when investors wanted to redeem $7 billion at once while he only had $300 million. So, in December 2008, his sons reported this Ponzi scheme to the federal authorities. Bernie got a well-deserved 150-year sentence and had to forfeit all his personal assets that could be located. The con man's punishment was extended to his family, who had to forfeit their assets for getting involved. Guess they wished they had played Monopoly with Bernie instead. Up next is Ike Batista. This Brazilian entrepreneur moved from being a door-to-door insurance salesman to a large-scale dealer in precious metals and oil. Batista took over the diamond and gold mining markets from the 80s to the 2000s. By 2012, he was was billions of dollars rich and known for his playboy lifestyle. For this billionaire, it was all about private jets, yachts, and Lamborghinis. When the Brazilian economy and precious metals industry crashed between 2012 and 2014, so did his chances of ever becoming the richest man on earth. Batista's company became bankrupt, and his luck ran out when it was discovered that he paid millions of dollars in political bribes to secure contracts. This earned him 30 years in prison. Up next is Michael Pearson. Michael was a billionaire that made more than $150 million in 2015 alone as an executive at Valeant Pharmaceuticals. However, things changed drastically when he acquired several companies that led to debt and huge increases in the price of his drugs. Stock prices dropped by more than 80% while Michael was being investigated, and criminal charges were leveled against him. Strangely enough, he was a billionaire on paper, using borrowed money as donations to Duke University. Up next is Aubrey Mcclendon. Aubrey was a billionaire who was once the head of Chesapeake Energy Company, a successful venture that got into bankruptcy when its stock prices crashed by more than 85%. He was faced with a debt load of more than $10 billion between 2000 and 2010. However, the story ended even more tragically when the once-upon-a-time billionaire got involved in a fatal car crash in March 2016. And there you have it. Which billionaire did you think didn't deserve to lose it all? Let me know in the comments. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching.